In December of 1944, the worries and anxiety of the country were focused on a world war. People didn't know what was going to be happening the next day. They needed distractions. That came from Hollywood and from sports. And the National Football League had an excellent championship game. We're going to cover it tonight with Bob Swick, a Green Bay Packers fan and shareholder, who's going to tell us about this great Packers championship in 1944. Bob's up in just a moment to tell us all about it.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another edition of our championship series where we're covering the pre-Super Bowl NFL championship games. And boy, are we having a blast doing it. We are right smack dab in the middle of the 1940s, and we have a special guest today, a returning guest. Bob Swick of Gridiron Greats magazine is here to talk about tonight's championship, and I'll let him introduce what's going on here. Bob, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Darren, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, Bob, but we had such a great time talking about the Packers championship a few weeks ago, and we are excited to hear about this. It's another Packers championship, and I'll let you tell us a little bit about it.
Well, to give the time frame, 1944, we're right in the middle of World War II, basically. The league has been pretty much upended. We see two teams merged to try to maintain a single team, and that is the Cardinals team and the Pittsburgh Steelers team, which became Card Pit, one of the teams of the league that year. And there was some talent in the NFL, but a lot of the guys were out because of the war. They were drafted, so on and so forth. So it's a very interesting time in sports history that President Roosevelt allowed the league, Major League Baseball and NFL football, and some college football to take place. And especially with the NFL, again, a short season, limited travel. He was in favor of it. It was good for the morale of the country. And the Packers that year were an interesting team because there were a lot of guys that you really didn't know a lot about, but there were many returning veterans and stars that still continued to play. In particular, Don Hutson, who was at that time, I believe, 31 years old, winding down the end of his career. They were still coached under Curly Lambeau, and they also had Tony Cannondale as their quarterback. But that got all changed because after the third game of the season, he was forced to join the military. So he was replaced by a gentleman named Irv Comp, C-O-M-P. And Irv basically was thrown into the lion's den and actually performed well for the team that season. And he was under the guise of being trained and taught by Curly Lambeau, which really helped his playing and learning about the position, so on and so forth. The Packers ended up 8-2, and the two games they lost were shutouts, one against the team they ended up playing in the championship game, and that's the New York Football Giants. And basically the rest is history, because they lost to the Giants, I believe, 24-0 several weeks before the championship game. And they came out and they ended up beating the Giants 14-7 in the championship game. And it was a very, very close game, a very tight game. And as such, it was, one of their, what I've read about it and what I can surmise, that was their sixth championship at the time. And it was one of the weakest teams that ever won a championship for them in that time frame.
Yeah, that is definitely, I mean, it's definitely a milestone, no matter what the era is, because you had teams that were dominating in just the years past. We've been studying this pretty close, and the Chicago Bears are in like every championship game the previous four or five,
Right.
and had some dominating seasons, even in the seasons that they lost, such as the 42 season, which we just talked about the last week. But just to be able to compete, and the Packers were in it each year. It's just
Right.
the Bears were just annihilating people with this, the T formation, and they were the only ones running it for some time and
Right.
had it perfected. So everybody's starting to catch up to them. The Bears through attrition, just like everybody else, lost some players, and so I think the more level playing grounds coming about. But it's no small feat that the Packers ended up going to the championship game and beating a team, like you said, that just blanked them a few weeks earlier
Right.
in a game. So usually that doesn't happen. It's most people were probably thinking, oh, it's going to be more of the same in this championship game.
Right. Like we talked a little bit about before we got started, I would love to be a fly. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during that time frame, especially for football, because I'm wondering in a way, were the Giants overconfident going into that game, knowing they had shut out the Packers a few weeks ago? And were they overconfident to say, okay, maybe this was going to work a lot better than if they were meeting, let's say, another team, if they were meeting the Bears again, or whatever the case, or whatever the team may have been. So I thought it was interesting to see, and reading some of the write-ups about the game, how the Packers came out and playing in New York at the time. Really, they had nothing to lose and they won. That's the way I look at it. I mean, I'm oversimplifying the game, but that to me really, I think is how it played out.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting small little side stories going into this championship game. If it would have been built up back then, like we built up the Super Bowl, the 2 weeks leading up to this big game would have been definitely one of the big stories would be the Giants starting quarterback. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about that story.
Right. I mean, Hebder was a phenomenal quarterback at the time. He really, was one of the best quarterbacks in the league at the time. And I think that also played into the fact that the Giants were confident behind him at quarterback that they could end up winning the game. And I again going against the Nerve Comp, who was not really a tested player, but yet did win through the season. It really added a lot of I think the belief that the Giants were going to win more than anything else.
Now, it had to also play a role for strategy too, because Herber is very familiar with what Curly Lambeau wants to do with his offenses and
Right.
how the Packers are operating. Most of the personnel Arnie played with, for the last decade, previous to this
Right.
season. So he knows the idiosyncrasies of the team and what's going to go on. So that had to be an advantage for the Giants, one would think, too.
Oh, most definitely, and again, that is that whole area there that he actually understood a lot of their defenses that they were throwing at them, and it's a question of you can't make any mental mistakes like that, because even though you know the defense, there could be that slight change, that slight movement, whatever the case may be, and the defense reads what you're going to do, and that's it. And more so then, because again, it's more of a running game. It's a minimal passing game, and especially given that time frame as far as who was playing, the Giants again, I thought were a much stronger team than the Packers, and they should have won the game. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, especially, I mean, the Giants, not only they have Herber, but they still have Ward Cup and Ken Strong. And, they
Yeah.
have it's basically the Eastern All-Star team almost on the Giants squad that
And
year.
it,
And
that's very true. And again, the East division to me was less strong than the Western division. The Western division to me was stronger that year. Again with the Bears, again with the Lions, you saw some strong teams, And the Packers basically out of the blue come out and can take the division that way. So it's interesting to see that. And again, that was 5 years past their last championship, which was in 1939. And that 1939 team, in my opinion, you only had a few players left from the 39 team still playing in the 44 team. And again, it did add, and again, I think Don Hudson was pretty much a key to that entire team. He was the veteran. He could bring the team together. They all played to win, but he was definitely wanting to win again, to prove that he could win again. And this is also interesting because this was the last championship that Curly Lambeau won with the Green Bay Packers. So that is his last championship season that he had. Packers pretty much went into almost an oblivion through the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, late 50s until Lombardi took over. So it was, you had that whole, not in the 44 season, but as the years went on after the 44 season, that whole scenario started playing out where he wanted to change. He went on with the Cardinals, so on and so forth. So, I mean, things were changing there at the same time. And again, you're playing in the background of World War II. So there's a lot of stress, in my opinion, with guys, not knowing, hey, I could be drafted tomorrow. This could be my last game I'm playing. This could be, whatever type of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't know the outcome of the war either. They don't know if they're going to be
Exactly. Yeah.
having to learn German, a year from then or whatever,
Right.
So,
Right. So it really, added a lot of stress to the entire game and the season. It's interesting. The first loss they had that year was against the Bears, and they got shut out by the Bears 21-0. So it was kind of interesting to see two teams that I thought would be in the championship, the Bears and the Giants, ends up being the Packers and the Giants, teams that both shut out the Packers. If there's irony, there's irony there. I mean, that's the way that's the way you can look at it. So
yeah, that's most definitely. And we've been talking a lot about, the same four teams in the championship games from basically these last 6 or 7 seasons that we've been covering this series. It's the Packers and the Giants, or I'm sorry, the Packers and the Bears over in the
Bears,
West. It's the
right,
Giants and the Redskins over in the East. And maybe you get a Detroit pop up, maybe you get the Rams pop up, and really nobody else is really giving them much competition. It's usually
right.
those four teams are representing in the championship game. So kind of an
And
interesting era.
that's how powerful those teams were. And again, for Green Bay to be that powerful as such a small team in a small town type of thing, they still represented small town football in the 40s, even though they were playing a few games in Milwaukee. They were a small town team, and small town football was pretty much starting to, as you well know, started to collapse, and we had more of the bigger city type football where they could draw, in my opinion, better players. More players would be more apt. Hey, I'll go to Chicago and play. I can have a life there. I'll go to New York City and play. That type of thing. Or I'll go to Boston or Detroit, so on and so forth. So that plays into it at the same time. So it's interesting the season is very interesting. And during the season too, I'd like to add on October 14th, 1944, the Packers went to Nashville, Tennessee, and they played an exhibition game against the Eagles. And the Eagles pounded them 38-13 in the exhibition game. But the interesting point, it was the first professional game ever played in Nashville, Tennessee.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was the first time ever. I
Now,
found
where
that.
they play at like Vanderbilt Stadium or?
I don't. It was actually I don't know I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was in Nashville, and I believe it was like a regular park type of regular park type of situation. I don't think it was at one of the colleges, But it was a pretty big deal at the time and they drew a lot of people. And I'm wondering if they were testing the waters to see if they could go down south somewhat as far as playing, which would be a little better weather for them. But again, then you had the problems with, you know, again, during war years, traveling, so on and so forth. So the more limited they were where they were traveling, the better off they would have been with regards to where the teams were and where they ended up, type of situation.
Yeah, you that may have hold some water, your theory on that, because I think they were also trying to figure out, okay, let's, everything's up sort of in the north and the east coast, and there's nothing in the south, nothing out west, and a lot of it's the travel restrictions. You wouldn't
Right,
have passenger airplanes going, like we see today. That
right,
stuff's just starting to come along, and it really got vamped up because of the war. The technology that got developed during the war they took in the peacetime and brought into the modern civilians to have some luxuries in life. And
right,
so we
right.
see we see the moving out west a couple years from this season and some things like that. So that's got some interesting merit to it.
And again, the NFL did not want to expand to California because there was a big push for the Los Angeles Dons and the San Francisco team, which ultimately were the 49ers. And they were, willing to, fly the teams out there, play 2 games there, and then fly them back. And they were pretty adamant against it. So what starts to form in 1946? All American Football Conference, which was a classic example of competition because Archibald saw that there was a need and he saw an expansion in football to the whole country. Just like what you just said, a more East Coast, Upper Midwest type of league rather than a true American league that covered the bulk of the country. So
Yeah,
that kind of tied into that at that time also. So it was it.
yeah. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about the details of the game? We know what the final score was, but how was the scoring in this game?
Well, it was pretty much a dogfight more than anything else. And as far as I could tell, and from what I read, and I just want to pull it up here if I can. The Packers and the Giants looked very, very. Oh boy, I'm trying to find it here. Um,
But while you're looking that up, let me just bring up some things. I've been watching sort of the attendance of these games. So now
okay,
this is the 11th game, I believe, or I'm sorry, the 12th game in this championship series. So if you look back in 1933, the first game drew 26,000 in Chicago Wrigley Field. And it was bouncing around the mid 30s down to the teens for much of the time. And by the time we get to 1944, we hit 46,000 in New York City at the Polo Grounds at this game as the paid attendance. So that's not too bad in the middle of December in New York City.
no, it wasn't. And okay, I apologize because I had lost my place here. Ted Fritsch scored both of the team's touchdowns, and basically they just ran the ball, and the Giants just couldn't stop them more than anything else. An interesting note, and I had this in my notes. The take for the game, the winners, the Packers won $1,500 apiece for
Hmm.
the game, while the Giants picked up $900 for the game. So that was an incredible sum of money in 1944 for them to win. But basically, it was a ground game more than anything else. It was just a grind out ground game. Fritsch, the fullback for the Packers, well suited for both good weather and poor weather running. He was a very, very good fullback for the Packers, and he did end up scoring both touchdowns. And again, I apologize here.
You looking for that?
The Packers scored both touchdowns in the second quarter, and then the Giants scored basically a meaningless touchdown in the fourth quarter when it was too late, and they never came back. So it was a 14-7 Packers victory. Not a lot of action in the game. Like I said, it was a ground game more than anything else. Just a grinding out ground game. One interesting tidbit of that, Lambeau did not want his quarterback to throw much in that game because it was too big of a game for him as far as pressure was concerned. And because of it, he stuck with the running game. He knew Fritz could, just bang it out. And again, bangs out 3-4 yards every run. That's all you need. You get a first down and then you start it all over again type of situation. So
that's smart coaching though. When you
yeah,
have a young
exactly.
inexperienced quarterback and a big game, that's not a bad strategy at all.
And the one thing I didn't understand, because the Giants were so powerful in the game they beat the Packers earlier in the season, 24-0. It's almost like the Packers defense out of the blue became powerful, and really stopped everything that the Giants were going to do that game. And again, they could have had a shutout in that game if the Giants hadn't scored their simple touchdown in the fourth quarter there, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes maybe, those playing that earlier games, you learn a little bit about your opponent. And
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. And
maybe
again,
they've learned what they wanted to run or how they were blocking, and the players themselves or the coaching, got a different strategy or techniques to oppose that and figured it out.
exactly. And I think in a small league like the NFL was at that time, you really know what everybody was doing. There really was not that much that you didn't see in a previous game, and even by reading newspaper reports of the games,
Well,
again,
don't tell the Redskins that back in 1940 though, the 73 nothing game. Don't tell
yeah, I agree with
them.
that. I agree with that.
They got caught by
That's the
surprise a
exception
little
to
bit.
the whole situation. But I think they kind of knew, each team knew what the other team was going to do, so it was basically down to that 60 minutes on the gridiron, whether or not they were going to, be able to make their game plan work better than the other team's game plan. I've always said that in early football. That's what it really comes down to. Yeah, there are breaks that happen in any game, but you did not have the micromanaged, micro-coached game that you have today back then. There was playing going on. You improvised a little, and so on, and the game had a flow to it. In other words,
Right.
compared to today, which is just a hopscotch of a few plays here and there, and that's it.
Like the old saying goes, though, sometimes it's not the X's and the O's that wins the games, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
Exactly.
So maybe
Exactly.
that's what happened in that. Now, so that's a great uh, coverage of that game and the season. We appreciate you doing that. But you guys, you and Joe Squires, who's going to be our guest on the next episode of this championship series, when we'll be talking about that game. You guys have a great podcast with Gridiron Greats magazine. What do you guys have coming up that some listeners might be interested in hearing?
But we're working on a couple of what we call super collectors in our magazine. We feature from time to time individuals that we call our super collector. They have a collection that is just incredible to view and incredible to look at. And we're going to have a guest on pretty soon, just trying to coordinate the time, who's going to be our super collector in this coming issue, which is on press right now, who has an amazing collection of Super Bowl tickets, programs, and he also has an incredible collection of the 1972 Sunoco football stamps in both the album, individual stamps, graded stamps, and the sheets of stamps, which is pretty rare to say the least. So he's going to be an upcoming guest on our program. We're also working on a few other guests at this time, again, collector related more than anything else. We, on our podcast, we interview authors like yourself, We interview, we've actually had a former football player on, and we also look at more people who collect and who enjoy showing their collections to the public and talk about it. And we'd like to learn about the history and the memorabilia of the game, and we do it through the collecting aspect of it. So it's
Yeah.
something that we enjoy. And we've had the podcast for many years now. I didn't realize we have been doing it for over, I believe now, almost 15 years.
Wow.
So it's we went through a couple networks. We're on the Sports History Network now also, and that's really helped us a lot. We got a lot more people listening and viewing it, and we went to a format like this, so we were on a video. So it's nice to actually see the collections, the memorabilia in person, let's say, and that really adds to the story of the collection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I can't wait to hear the gentleman's coming on, the super collector with the Sunoco stamps. I can remember those Sunoco stamps because in the town I lived in, where I grew up, we had two gas stations right across the street from each other,
Okay,
and we had an Arco and a Sunoco.
okay,
So, but they had these gas stations. They gave away things all the time, and the kids sort of influenced, at least in my family. You know, my brother and I, we influenced my dad where he would get his gas at.
yeah,
We made
yeah,
sure
I
we
believe it.
went with them. And but Arco was giving away like Noah's Ark little plastic animals, and Sunoco's giving away those stamps.
Yeah,
And when I'm like 5 or 6 at the time, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do with a damn stamp? I want the animal. I can go
yeah,
home and play
well,
with
yeah, yeah.
the animal. What a fool I am now. I look back at that, but
Well, it was an interesting promotion because you got a little packet of 9 stamps, and you could send away for an album, and you get the album and you put your stickers on the album. And over the years, I've owned several of the albums with stamps, without stamps, so on and so forth. But it's actually the largest collection of football players' stamps, cards, at that time. 624 different players uh,
wow.
and stamps were found in that album. So it was an amazing, very extensive, expanded set of football players that you didn't get in the 1972 Topps football set or any other set that was available at that time. So
God, I'm trying to do the math. That had to be like almost every player in the
yeah,
NFL at the
it
time.
basically was. I mean, it really was, and they came out with an updated series toward the end of the season, which is it was much more rare than the regular stamps that were issued, and those updated stamps basically brought, if there were signings during the season or whatever, they brought in new players. So it was very interesting, very interesting set of stamps. I call them stamp cards, but they are actual, paper stamps that you would put in the album. And the album was very educational too. It explained about, the teams, the league, so on and so forth. So it was a great promotion at that time. It's so sad that there's just so few promotions, giveaways, cards and cereal boxes or whatever. They're just all gone now. You know what I mean? You won't go to a gas station today, I'm sure, and be handed a card or a picture of a player or anything like that.
Well, now you don't even see people most of the
Yeah,
time when you go
yeah,
to a
yeah,
gas
exactly.
station. Yeah,
Yep,
you look at
yep,
a screen. Everything's digital now. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
but well, you can't even go to a ball game and get a paper ticket anymore. It's all digital. It's
that's so
crazy. Even
sad.
at my local high school games, you can't do that anymore. COVID
That's
sort of really turned the tide on that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, and it's it's sad to see because that's a big part of our history of the sport. And again, if you could ever find a ticket from 1944 or a program from 1944, just look at the history of that. That survived the war. It survived all the paper drives at that time during the war, and can you imagine that being that person sitting in that stand in that ticket? uh, what was going on in their mind, what their situation was, so on and so forth. Was it a military person on leave who got to see a game, so on and so forth? I know my father, the few times he was on leave, he went to and came back to Connecticut. He went to the Yale Bowl, and he was granted a seat based on his uniform. They let all active duty military men go see the games. So he went in. I know he went into a couple games and saw, football, and very interesting. How many other teams throughout the country and stadiums, both baseball and football, did that. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a great era. It's a great era of saving all these collectibles like you yourself and a lot of our friends are doing and preserving the game through that way because it was such
Right.
an interesting part of it. And it really tells the story of these players behind the scenes. Not so much we can't watch them all on film. There are some
Right.
games on film. It's not like today where you can turn on NFL Network and see every single play and when they
Right.
blew their nose on the sideline too. But it's a great way for us to appreciate what these men did back
And
in that era.
And another big part of that time frame, there were a lot of military service teams that actually printed programs of the games between the different military service teams. And there were some star players that played on those teams. Baseball players playing football, so on and so forth. Football players playing. So it was a pretty fascinating time in our football history, to say the least. With that, and again, that's another source of collecting the military programs between the service teams, and a lot of those programs are very difficult to find because they probably didn't print a lot, and a lot of them were never saved one way or the other. So
yeah, good point. Good
uh,
point. Well, it sounds like some great episodes coming up and some great articles in the magazine to read. I can't wait to get my copy. And why don't you tell folks, first of all, where they can get a subscription to Gridiron Greats magazine and what days they can find you on your podcast.
Sure. The magazine, just go to our website, gridirongreatsmagazine.com. We have all the information for back issues and for subscribing. And you'll see the link right on that for our podcast, or just go on to Sports History Network and you'll see our logo there, and click that on. You'll see all the podcasts that we've had up to this point. And again, we don't have a set schedule as far as our podcasts, but we try to do at least 2 a month and interview people and publish it.
All right. Well, very good, Bob. We appreciate you coming on here and sharing this history.
I just want to show one thing.
Oh yeah, please do.
Memorabilia, which I have none. I'm sad to say, for 1944, but I do have a reprint picture of the 1944 team.
Oh yeah.
This was from Champion Cards. It was a series that they made of Packer cards. So that's my only piece of theme for the 1944 team.
Looks almost like a Christmas card. They got I can't tell if that's snow on the ground, but the trees, both leaves off and pine trees in the background. Gosh.
It was apparently a camp photo because I don't think they were able to play at their have a preseason at their normal location. So I got a feeling they were on a lake somewhere and right outside of Green Bay there, or Door Lake County there. And they probably played at a cabin over there and got ready there, and then came into town and started to play.
Have a few beers and then when played football game.
Exactly.
So it was back then. All right, Bob, we appreciate you coming on, sharing about this great history of the Packers and the 44 NFL season, and sharing what you got going on in life. And we'd love to have you on again sometime, and appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff, for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.